Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sports Writers Podcast. There they are, full house here in the middle of the summer. Phil Stacy, the executive sports editor of the Salem News. I don't know what that face is Matt Williams has down at the bottom of my screen in the bright yellow T-shirt. Matt Williams, Nick Kukuru, sports editor at the Gloucester Times, in the little darker yellow T-shirt, and then, of course, Nick Giannino from the Salem News as well, hydrating himself, and we are ready to go here for the Sports Writers Podcast. And gentlemen, and Phil, I'll start with you. I talked to you last week with the passing of Jean DePlacido, the longtime sports writer. I was reading the obituary in the Salem News last week, and I'd forgotten that, yeah, she started at the old Peabody Times. And remember, they merged with the Salem News, the Beverly Times, Peabody Times, and so on. And but always part-time. So as we do this podcast, her visiting hours are Monday afternoon. Her funeral is Tuesday of this week. And so Phil and the rest of you guys, I can weigh in as well, knowing Jean, but just some thoughts on this very sudden and surprise passing.
Yeah. It's a week plus 1 day, and it's still numbing to even think that not only we don't have Jean, but I haven't talked to Jean. I haven't gotten any stories from Jean. And I think maybe to tell you a little bit about just how proficient Jean was at her job. After her passing, I still had 5 stories to edit of hers that she had sent in that were not due to run in the newspaper yet, but because she was so good at what she did and so efficient, I was editing her after the fact, which was a little bit strange, to be honest, knowing that, everything was familiar to me. Jean had a writing style like all good writers do. She had her own writing style, and, the quirks that she had in her prose was certainly there, but I couldn't call her or email her and say, hey, great job, Jean, nice job, here's what you have next. And, naturally that was a little bit depressing, to be honest with you. And when I got to the last one, there was a finality to it, and it hasn't even run in the newspaper on our website yet because there were so many of her stories. And I think the final one, or it might have run today, Monday. Today might have been the last one of hers. But she's gone, but I don't feel as though it's really going to sink in until we start up the next school year. And maybe the guys could verify this with me, but what Jean just did, so, I mean, yes, to be clear, she was a part-time worker. In fact, she was a correspondent, which is even a little bit different than part-time. She never came in the office. She always worked from home, that type thing. But she dove right in, did the same amount of same type stuff we did, whether it was previewing the season or going out and covering games. And, as we got down to later in the season, writing previews, writing features, looking ahead to the playoffs, doing all-star teams. And then Jean would do a million other things, whatever we need her to do. I've heard from, going out to a few Little League All-Star games this past week. I heard from dozens and dozens of people about Jean, how she loved the Little League tournament, was always there, and, was always fair to the teams and the kids and the coaches, and didn't highlight mistakes or errors, and always focused on the positivity. Jean did whatever we asked her to do: road race, boat race, if I needed her to go to the polo matches on a Sunday, she would do that. Basically, she would do anything. So we've talked amongst ourselves, and can we get someone else to fill in the hours that Jean worked? Yeah, probably. We hope so anyway, that we can do that. But can we replace Jean? No, it's just not for the knowledge that she had, not for the institutional know-how of the cities and towns that she covered, the city that she lived in, Peabody, the history that she had with coaches and families in various sports, and knowing who went where to college and how to stay in touch with them and whatnot. No, we will never have that again. So from that standpoint, it's a huge loss. Even more so, it's a great loss because there are 5 DePlacido adult children who lost their mother. There are another 4 DePlacido grandchildren who have lost their grandmother. There are countless people who have lost a wonderful, caring, and genuinely good person as a friend. And that, to me, is what hurts the most. I mean, I'll miss her as a worker, granted, but I will miss her more as just a good, decent human being. Rose Raymond said it best. You never heard anybody say a bad word about her. That certainly wouldn't be the case when it's my time. But for Jean, it's true. And we miss her terribly now and will for a long, long time.
I'll go around. Matt Williams, you want to weigh in, and anyone else moving on here? Matt?
Well, I think I hope everybody read the story that Phil put together about Jean, her life, and I think I was particularly struck by the way that her husband John and her worked together in the '80s and in the early '90s. I mean, I knew that Jean used to write John stories, but I didn't know the full details. And I thought Mike, her son, in that story told it so well about how they were a team. And John would take the photos and worry about some of the layout and take care of some of the interviews. And it's sort of intimated that Jean was a little bit nervous about doing the interviews by herself, back
Yeah,
then,
she
right in the
was.
'80s. I can imagine, interviewing like Arthur Adamopoulos and Bill Hamer and Ken Perrone, and perhaps being a little bit intimidating in those days, which is funny to think about. 40 some years later, Jean DePlacido would storm into Fenway Park and interview Jacoby Ellsbury as part of a Little League story. And she would talk to professional Bruins, when they came around to do library stories, when they did their reading programs. And she went to multiple Stanley Cup celebration parties, when the Yannettis won the Cup and various other people locally. So, that journey is pretty fun to think about and pretty incredible. But, it was great for me as a younger person to learn, not just that it was like a man woman, kind of nom de plume situation there, but that it was real teamwork, right? And that they brought each other's strengths out. John with the design and the artistic stuff, and Jean with the written word. I thought that was really well told and really moving. And I think the other thing that people should know about Jean, if they don't, is that she never said no to anything. I mean, I never told Jean to do something. If something came across my desk that she might be interested in, or that was one of her accounts, so to speak, I would usually send it to her and say, Jean, would you like to do this? Are you too busy? I can do it, and she almost immediately, within 15 minutes, would send back an email and say, I got it. I'd love to do it. And then usually within a day or less, she'd send the story in. So she was not one to ever refuse to do something or ever take a long time dilly-dally. And she did not waste a lot of time on the artistic process, sitting around waiting for the muse to inspire her. She churned out the stories as quickly as possible. And, I think one thing that people who maybe didn't get a chance to sit next to Jean or watch games with her might not realize she was a very funny person. She had a dry wit, Jean did, and she could make certain comments during games that you might not expect that would just crack you up, and was just a joy to sit next to, on the rare occasions later in her career where, we had the opportunity to have 2 people at the same game, which is sort of rare for us. But whenever we did, it was always a treat to sit next to Jean and listen to her comments and observations and things like that. That was definitely always fun too.
Guys, I think Nick, as it be.
Yeah, sure. I didn't know Jean quite as long as these guys, but did get to know her over the past 6 or 7 years. And I'd say we had a very professional relationship, but I did get to share some car rides, whether it be into the city for a big game or Western Mass or what have you. And the discussions were always very easy. She was very easy to talk to. She always had a lot to say. And the biggest thing I would gather from her, from just being around her and reading her stuff and having conversations with her, was she really cared about the players. She really cared about the student athletes. She was excited to tell their stories. She was excited just to talk about them. We'd go to a game and get back in the car to drive home or whatever, and that's what she wanted to talk about was, oh, did you see the game by this girl, or how about this pass, or this shot, whatever the case may be. We did a lot of basketball together in the winter months, but yeah, she was just passionate about what she did, and she did it all the way up until the end. I mean, she was scheduled to cover a little league game for us that weekend right before she passed. I think it kept
and
her
wanted
going
to, and her kids had to tell her,
wanted to, yeah.
"You're not feeling well enough to do this, Jean. Step back." And I don't think they called her Jean. I think they said Mom, but you get my
Right.
Called her Gene.
Might have used correspondent. I'm not sure.
Could have said writing machine. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just whatever the sport was, whether it was boys or girls, whether it was high school or college or little league or crew or sailing, it didn't matter. She had a passion for it, and she loved telling her stories and loved telling their stories, and I think that really resonated in her writing. And anyone who came across her, I'm sure, realized that this was her life for 40 plus years. She did this stuff for us, and yeah, we're just really gonna miss her. We're gonna miss her work. We're gonna miss talking with her day to day and having her come up with feature stories that we would have never thought of, or we would have never found without her. So she was a huge asset to our company and became a good friend. I'm sure she was very close with Willie and Phil as well. But yeah, we're gonna miss her, and it's gonna be impossible to replace someone like her.
She loved the Bruins too. She would always make, always
Yeah.
crack me up though. She would always, especially when they weren't playing well, she would always make little dry, kind of cutting comments on Phil's tweets about the
Yeah.
Bruins, and it was always
Yeah,
like,
she would.
here's Gene off the top rope ripping the Bruins.
It was always nice to get a like from Gene on any of my tweets or a retweet. Those were big.
Yeah,
She was
Few and
good.
far between.
She was good on Twitter. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should say too that I think the freedom that Jean had as a correspondent worked to her benefit in terms of how far she was able to spread her sports writing tentacles, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, as full-time guys, we have beats, we all share in the football, let's say, but as Nick mentioned, Nick's a basketball guy, Nick's a golf guy, Willie does the baseball and the girls hockey, and I do the hockey and the lacrosse, that kind of thing. But Jean could do anything. So she got to know everyone, and everyone knows her. Now, it's not as though we don't know coaches in other sports, but Jean had real relationships with a lot of those people where she had the versatility of she could cover St. John's Prep hockey on a Wednesday, Thursday go to a volleyball match, and although volleyball's not in the winter, but you get my point. And Friday night, go to a big, Fenwick St. Mary's girls basketball game, be welcomed, recognized in all three places, and write as well of a story for any one of those three. So her versatility was an enormous asset to us. I just think, between that, the fact that she was so beloved and really cared for, I think, by our North Shore sports community. I think people really treated her not only with respect, but with love and care. And can we get you a chair, Jean? Are you all set? Do you want to park closer? Is there anything we can do for you? Do you want us to bring some kids out to talk to after the game? I think people wanted to help Jean because that's the vibe she gave across, that she was always helping others. So people, I think, went out of their way to help Jean however they could as well.
I think one thing too that always impressed me was for interviews, she wouldn't use a recorder. She would just take notes on a notepad, and Phil wrote that in the story as well. But I would always notice that and say, geez, how is she going to remember all this? And then if we would be covering the same game I would write my story, then maybe edit hers and say, oh, we use the same quote here, and be word for word like what I had off my recording. And I always thought that was very impressive, very cool, something I envied, something I could never do. So that was really cool. But I mean, I'm sure that's what she did back in the 80s and 90s and just stuck to her ways with what worked for her. So that was yeah, that was pretty cool.
And in I know we've harped on the theme of positivity here a few times, but one thing I think all four of us are probably taught early on in whether it was a college class or an editor or whatnot, you don't empty the notebook, Bill. You don't use every single quote that somebody gives you. You just use the best ones to shape your story. Not every 2-minute interview is going to have 2 minutes worth of great quotes. Some of them might be repetitive, or some of them you might be able to say better in your own words, and then you lead in with a better quote kind of thing. But Jean loved to empty the notebook, and God love her for it. And because she was so positive, one of the things she always made sure to put in her stories, and sometimes we left it out, sometimes we edited it, but it was, we had, an athlete or a coach saying, it was so much fun, and we had so much fun, it was so much fun. And I would say to her sometimes, like, Jean, not everybody can have this much fun. I don't think it's I don't know that it's possible. But she would say, no, they said it. They said it. They said, okay, just making sure. But that's the positivity Jean radiated.
Yeah. As I was telling you the other day, I saw her just a few weeks ago at the Peabody girls softball game over in Peabody, one of the playoff games, and still the same as ever. I mean, she's got her, she's I'm there, I'm taking some photos. I might miss something. She's always there to help you. Oh, it was a 1-3, 3-4, whatever the play was, she couldn't have been nicer. And I harken back to my days when I'd show up at, whether it be a basketball game, a hockey game, or a football game, and doing it on radio. You're tied up for the entire game. And then after the game, if you're lucky, you're able to get down on the field and interview people. And Jean always, she didn't slack at all on her interviews. In other words, she would track down whoever was the person to talk to for a particular game. And she, and had good conversations with them, so, like you said, got some great quotes from them. So I definitely will miss her. And it's just stunning to realize that, she won't be at these games. And over the years, come playoff time, sometimes I get to stand with you guys in the sidelines or, at the court or the rink or wherever. And she was all, I always look forward to seeing her, whatever the venue was. It's always great to see Jean covering the game, knowing that, she might be able to help you out if you miss something throughout the course of the game.
I touched on this a little bit, Bill, in the story I wrote, and thank you, Willie, for mentioning that earlier. But I think it's important to note that Jean had a lot of great relationships, but she would be the first to tell you she had a very special relationship with St. John's Prep football. Having covered the team for more than 40 years, was very close to the team, the players, the program, whatnot. I always love to see, and again, Jean was kind of a one-woman show as far as it went for the prep. Only when it would get to be like a big playoff game, we might double it up and have more than one person there. Or if it was a very slow Saturday, and I think last year I went over to do a feature on Janelle Aguero during a Saturday game that Jean was at. And it always made me chuckle that in the post-game press conferences, Jean would be front and center talking with whoever needed to. Didn't matter who else was there. And St. John's Prep is, state power football, defending state champs or whatever. And there'd be, young guys there from other media outlets or maybe some other people. And Jean, took no quarter. She was right there in front, asking the tough questions, tough but fair, got the kids she needed to. And I think that was a two-way street. I think they've always treated her, as everybody has. But, Jean made that beat her thing. And as I said, premier program in the state, and those players love Jean. I would expect, I don't know when people will hear this, but I would expect at the wake, there are going to be not only a ton of people from her adopted hometown of Peabody, but a ton of former St. John's Prep athletes, particularly the football team, there to pay their respects to Jean, paying it forward, as it were. Because she certainly treated an awful lot of them very, very well. But I did love how Jean, would dig her Uggs in the turf and mark her territory, so to speak, and make sure she got the interview, the first question, all these different things when it came to St. John's Prep football.
Right. Nick Kukuru, anything from you? I want to just.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a direct colleague with Jean like the rest of these guys. I've only really met her in person, I want to say a handful of times, but I was always impressed with, when we share a lot of games with the Gloucester Times and Salem News, since, Gloucester plays pretty much their entire coverage area. And I was just always impressed with, when she covered Gloucester team, one that she wasn't maybe, completely familiar with, she always captured the essence of that team in her game stories. Even if she only saw them once a year, you got a very knowledgeable and accurate, depiction of how they were as a team, even if it was just one game that she was covering.
That's a great point. A great point. Yeah.
And I mean, let's be honest, I think I've beaten her in the high school football picks, twice, maybe in 10 years. So, she's pretty good in that realm too.
I know she had no inside knowledge on any of these things. She wasn't talking to all the coaches like we do and things like that. She just went with her gut,
Very, sometimes predictable Jean could be in the picks, but she won a few times. She won in 2000. I'm looking at the list here, 2014, 2017. Did she win this past year? She may have. I don't remember who won this past year, but
Definitely not me.
I thought it was between you and I and Gene. It was pretty close between the three of us.
it was. Yeah, I don't remember ultimately who prevailed, and I can't find the
And there are times that she would be the only one picking St. John's Prep, not maybe
all the
recent
time,
years, but
regularly.
but you'd
Yeah.
be like, oh, there's no way they're going to beat Everett or whoever, Catholic Memorial, and inevitably an upset would happen, and Gene would be the only one to get it right, and that's why she was always right there near the top.
Oh yeah, the prep Everett would usually be one that she would get roused by, and she was usually pretty loyal to the people that were loyal to her. There were times when Peabody was making its kind of comeback that she and I would be the people that picked them, and I'd go to the games, and the assistant coaches or Mark would ask me, "Hey, did anybody else pick us?" And I would always say Gene, and he would always say, "Yep, Gene. Can always count on Gene."
Well, gentlemen, again, her funeral will be on Tuesday. The visiting hours were held on Monday as we record this on Monday. And of course, we're talking about Gene DePlacido, correspondent for the Salem News, who passed away, as Phil mentioned, just a week and a day ago, a week ago Sunday. So anyways, we're obviously thinking of her at this time and her impact to the North Shore sports community, as albeit with this podcast here on North Shore Sports. Nick Giannino, let's get a quick golf update from you. And we got a couple of baseball things to touch on as our time's running low here. But what do you have for us? What can you share with us?
Well, I spent the week last week at Essex County Club, which was spectacular. Just a beautiful course. Never had the chance to play it, but I got to walk it plenty this past week. And they held the 115th Massachusetts Amateur there. It's a long week of golf. You got 2 days of stroke play, then you got 32 golfers into the match play bracket. Play on Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday's a 36-hole championship. And no locals were able to come out on top. We did have a bunch of local golfers here from the North Shore make it into match play, but they all bowed out in the round of 32 on Wednesday. Just a really tough tournament to win. There's a lot of good golfers this past week, and the one that was the last one standing happened to be a 17-year-old from Longmeadow, Ryan Downs. He was in the championship last year and ended up losing. Came back this year, got the job done. He's from Longmeadow. He's going to be attending Vanderbilt. So really impressive for him, youngest ever in the 115-year history to win that tournament, and he does so right here on the North Shore at Essex County Club in Manchester by the Sea, Nick Cooper's neck of the woods. We also had the competitive course record at Essex broken. Not sure exactly how long that stood, but the gentleman that held the previous record of 65 has since passed away, so that tells you it's probably been standing for quite a while. And that was done by John Broderick, another kid that is going to be a sophomore at Vanderbilt. He shot a 62, 8 under par. So It's a good crowd over there. Great atmosphere. Good week of golf. Monday, the back ends Monday and Friday got a little rainy, a little dicey out there, but they were able to finish up. And yeah, just Mass Golf always picks excellent courses to host these events. They have been doing it for, like I said, 115 years. They run a great tournament over there, and it was a lot of fun.
Let me just jump to Nick Kukuru. Nick, I know you had a little league team that had to bow out here just recently, but what can you share with us from the Cape Ann area?
Yeah, I mean, we also had this weekend, the annual Blackburn Challenge, another Gloucester specific event. Of course, this is another rowing race. This one 20 miles around the Cape. So that's a yearly event there. We had some coverage of that in Monday's paper. That's an interesting one. You got some people in the kayaks. You got some people in like those sculls that you see on the Charles River, and then some people are nuts and will do it in a two-man dory, and that takes about 5 hours. So those are the real crazy ones. But yeah, great event there. And other than that, Little League was what was going on here. I'm sure Phil will touch a little more on that. He was at the District 15 finals on Friday night with Gloucester and Danvers American, which sounded like a real good game.
Let's just jump to Phil quickly on that, Phil, and then we got Matt on some baseball notes as well.
That was a terrific Little League game, that District 15 final. Kooks actually did the District 16 final, so he could talk on that. But Jacob McKenna of Danvers American gave up a few runs in the first couple of innings and then just shut Gloucester down the rest of the way. Also hit a 2-run homer to help himself. His team wins 7-4. Off the top of my head, I think 7 of the 9 Danvers hits went for extra bases. They had a bunch of RBI doubles. Evan Goldberg had a couple of doubles, I know, including an RBI for Danvers. They had a great catch in center field to quell what could have been a rally in the fourth inning. Geez, who made that play? That was Logan Boyle, center fielder for Danvers. Gloucester was strong too. I thought they were a really good team. The Bellissimo, are they triplets, Nick? The Bellissimos, Billy Bellissimo, and
I know at least 2 of them are brothers. I think I heard one might have been a cousin, but I'm not 100% positive.
Okay.
One of them is about a foot taller than the other two.
Yeah, exactly. and he was a masher. He could really play. That was Ben Bellissimo, I think. The big,
he's the tall one.
Yeah, he was really talented. I thought Bryce Albano played a good game. Luca Avali for Gloucester played really, really well. And John DeCastro did a really nice job with that team. I think they just ran into a pitcher who got hot, a team that had some timely hits. And, it's a group, said their manager, Kevin McCarthy, that's been together essentially since they were 8 years old. So they've played and won in a lot of these district tournaments, the 10-year-old tournament, the 11-year-old tournament, and now the Williamsport tournament. So they
Well, Phil froze up on me. Did he freeze up on you guys?
Same.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's not just me then. Okay.
But
I can piggyback. I saw Danvers American in the pool play, and I was kind of what I was impressed most of them about was especially now with the continuous lineup. I thought their 6 through 12 there was not much of a drop off. They were getting competitive at bats all the way through their lineup, where most of those teams kind of takes a really big drop off the last 3 or 4 hitters. But that continuous lineup I thought really worked to their advantage.
Yeah, and I thought they made good contact, Nick, even on their outs. There weren't a lot of bad swings. There weren't a lot of swings and misses. They made contact. They made.
Ooh.
I thought Hamilton Wenham looked really good. And if I was just basing it on warm-ups, I would have picked Hamilton Wenham to win that game. But Danvers just wore them down and forced them to make plays. And after a while, they capitalized on the errors that were made. And that's why they're in the position they're in.
Nick Giannino, do you have a baseball note of the
Sure.
other district? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was at the District 16 championship earlier in the week, and Swampscott took that one home 1-0 over Peabody West, and they were no hit in the game by Peabody's CJ York. So the only run came in the bottom of the first on a error throw to third, trying to get out a runner on a ground ball. And he went home and scored, and that was the only run of the game. So Peabody West CJ York threw a no-hitter and lost. Swampscott's pitcher, Michael Hall, only let up one hit, I think a double or single or double in the 5th inning. But it came down to 1 run. I mean, it was an hour-long game, and I thought the two best teams, Peabody West and Swampscott, were in that District 16 final, and Swampscott got it done to advance for the first time in recent memory. God, they haven't won that tournament quite a few years, so that was impressive. They didn't lose a single game. They beat Peabody West twice on their way to the championship, so that was fun. Yeah, Michael Hall was very impressive pitching for Swampscott. They got some base runners, but like I said, just that 1 run, it was really 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3 all game. And the Swampscott defense is what separated them, because Peabody West made a lot of contact, similar to what Phil was saying about Danvers American. They were hitting the ball, they were putting the bat on the ball and putting it in play, but Swampscott didn't make any mistakes. I mean, they were getting the outs at first base time and time again on the ground balls, making the plays in the outfield. So it'll be interesting to see what we get here in the sectionals next, what these two teams can be facing in there too. So should be fun.
Hey, Matt Williams, we're maybe you can mop it up with a few baseball notes here. We have a little over 3 minutes maybe to go here. Just keeping an eye on the clock
Sure.
here.
As we record here, the Legion baseball playoffs are ongoing. Obviously, Sunday schedule was deluged out, with all the weather around here. So single elimination in District 8, and our friends from Beverly Salem are the number 2 seed. They're going to wait for a winner of an Andover Newburyport game on Monday. Beverly Salem's going to play that team on Tuesday. Also on Monday, number 1 seed Lowell is going to play Marblehead Swampscott, which was the last seed in the playoffs, but upset Peabody in the first round and have come a long way. Marblehead Swampscott has. It's nice to look at the roster and see some Marblehead and Swampscott varsity players. They got an interesting team. And then, whoever is left from that group will play each other for the district championship on Wednesday. And the team that wins that goes to the state tournament, which begins this weekend. I think it's out west this year, or maybe it's in Natick. I forget. But if anybody from District 8 is going on, we'll be talking about that on the podcast next week, certainly. And also Sunday, the North Shore Navigators will host the NECBL All-Star Game at home at Frazier Field. That's going to be great baseball. I think it's a mid-afternoon take, 4 o'clock, 4:30. I know they're doing a lot of work to get ready, to have the ballpark in good shape, a lot of different attractions, refreshments, all that good stuff. I think it's going to be a great take. So if you're looking for something to do on Sunday, hopefully if it's not too hot out, I would say the NECBL All-Star Game should be a great game. The Navs have 6 representatives, including Beverly's own Braden Clark, the pitcher, who in 5 starts has a 0.93 ERA this summer out of Salve Regina. And when you think about the fact that 3 of his 5 starts have been against league-leading first place Newport Gulls, and his ERA is still under 1, he's having a heck of a summer. So he'll be one of 6 Navs playing in the NECB All-Star Game at home this Sunday. And like I said, I just think that should be a great take. Navs have been playing good baseball lately. They started off, 6 or 7, 8 games under 500. I think they're only 1 game under as we speak now on Monday, and have rocketed up to, I think, 3rd place in their division, maybe only a game or a half game out of 2nd. So they've been playing good baseball lately. And I think, again, that All-Star game should be a fun take for all the fans out there.
Bill, if I can just mention real quick, I had a story last week I thought was kind of neat. A lot of people in the area know Andy Scott, who's the Beverly High hockey coach. Andy is paralyzed from an accident during his senior year of high school. He's in a wheelchair. It hasn't stopped him from coaching when he was on Dave Wilbur's baseball coaching staff, and now he's the head coach of the Panther hockey team. He's got a unique relationship with one of the newest Bruins, James Van Riemsdyk, dating back to their time at the University of New Hampshire. They're still really good friends. James now is certainly in the later stages of his career, former number 2 overall pick of the Flyers, spent time with the Flyers and Toronto, but he's here now in Boston on a 1-year deal. And he said he's looking forward to getting up to see Andy coach this winter. And of course, Andy wants to go in and see him play in Boston. So if you haven't had a chance to read that, I thought it was a neat little story, the connection between the two of them.
Gentlemen, great stuff. Stay cool, stay dry, or whatever was going to be happening with us. But great talking with you, and we will talk again soon.